During our trip, we found an abandoned base. Exploring a new place changed our lives forever. It was supposed to be a break, 1 week, just me and my friends. No emails, no phones, just the road. We were four, me, Dan, Tyler, and Sean. High school friends, now grown up and buried in work, responsibilities, marriages, and the constant background hum of stress. This trip, we planned it for months. Rented an old Jeep, loaded up camping gear, no set destination. We just wanted space. That morning, we left the main highway and headed into the hills. Somewhere in northern Arizona, maybe, we'd already lost track. The air was dry, the sun high, the roads less and less marked. Then we saw it, a dirt path veering off into the woods, barely visible between the pines. No signs, no tire marks, just that weird, silent invitation. Dan slowed the Jeep. "You guys want to check this out?" Of course we did. The further we drove, the quieter everything got. The trees thickened. The signal bars on our phones vanished. The path narrowed until we saw it. A rusted steel gate, massive, heavy. On it, a barely visible sign. U.S. Government property, no trespassing. It was partially open. "Probably just an old depot or testing ground," Sean said, climbing out. "Desert's full of them." There was another metal plate, bent and hanging loose. Behind it, a strange emblem. Not military. Not familiar. Like someone had scratched a circle over a lightning bolt. I felt it in my gut. This place wasn't forgotten. It was hidden. Still, we stepped in. Inside the gate, it looked like a movie set. Abandoned buildings, cracked concrete, dust, silence. But it wasn't overgrown. No graffiti. No signs of squatters or animals. Just nothing. Tyler pulled out his phone. No bars. Like, not even searching dot. Sean kicked something. A shell casing. Old, but not decayed. I walked toward one of the buildings. Long, low, bunker style. Windows sealed with steel shutters. No sign of life, but the air felt stale, like it had been trapped in time. And then I saw something that made me stop cold. Fresh boot prints. We stood frozen for a few seconds, staring at those boot prints. They weren't ours. Too deep, too wide, and leading toward the nearest building. Tyler broke the silence. "Okay, so maybe someone else has been here recently. Rangers? Security?" Dan shook his head. "There's no way this place is patrolled. Not out here. It's not even on the map." The prints disappeared into a doorway. The door was half open, and the power panel beside it had a tiny red light, still blinking. Sean looked at me. "What kind of abandoned base still has power?" We pushed the door open. Inside, a long hallway, lined with rooms on both sides. The air was dry, sterile. No dust. The floor tiles were intact. On the left, a dorm-style room with metal cots. No mattresses, but the frames looked untouched by time. Dan flipped a switch. The lights flickered, then stayed on. "I don't like this," I said quietly. Tyler was already filming. Something in him needed to document it, even without service. But there were details that didn't make sense. No cobwebs. No rodents. No rust. Just cold, silent, artificial order, like someone had cleaned it up and then vanished. We moved deeper into the building. Sean opened a steel door at the back of the hallway. Behind it, a stairwell descending into darkness. We all stopped. "Hell no," Tyler muttered. But Dan was already starting down. "If there are answers here, they're down there." So we followed. The stairs led to a narrow corridor, concrete walls, flickering emergency lights, a hum in the air like static. The deeper we went, the more it felt like being underwater. Then Sean stopped and pointed. A monitor on the wall. It was on. Green text flickered, paused, and displayed a message. Asterisk access level 3 confirmed. Awaiting presence asterisk. We stared at it. "Presence?" Dan said. What the hell does that mean? Then, we heard it. Behind us. Not footsteps. Breathing. Slow. Deep. Too close. And then, the emergency lights started flashing. On. Off. On. Darkness. We weren't alone. We didn't move. Not at first. There's a kind of stillness your body falls into when it senses something ancient, something that doesn't belong in the world you know. That was us. For guys frozen in a concrete hallway, staring at a flickering screen while something behind us breathed like it had never stopped. Sean turned first, slowly, his phone flashlight trembling in his hand. He aimed it back toward the stairs. Nothing. Just empty steps. A humming light. No movement. But the breathing was real, and it was getting closer. Dan stepped in front of us, military instinct kicking in. Phones! Cameras! Record everything. We obeyed. Flashlights on. Cameras rolling. Tyler's hands were shaking. Then the lights cut completely. No flicker. Just black. I don't remember moving, but I know we ran. Blind. Bumping into each other. Into walls. Into air that felt thick and wet. Something moved past me, fast, silent. I didn't see it, but I felt it, like static across my skin. We found a door. Heavy steel. Dan shoved it open, and we fell into a room, square, sterile, humming with power. Inside, a control panel covered one wall, lights blinking, system still online. The door closed behind us. Not slammed. Just clicked. Okay. Sean panted, pointing at the screen. We need to figure out where the hell we are. The screen displayed a map. Not of the surface. Of the underground facility. It was massive. At least 5 levels. Corridors. Storage units. Laboratories. Dan zoomed in. A section near the center was marked Secure Containment. Another, Archive Do Not Access. And in the corner, a red dot. Blinking. Us. I think it's tracking us, I said. Why? Tyler asked. Why is this even on? Who left it running? That's when I noticed the other lights. Small ones, arranged along the panel like a diagram. Green, yellow, and one red. Sector 4, breach detected. We stared at it. None of us spoke. Then the red light began to pulse. 1, 2, 3 blinks. Then a line of text appeared beneath it. Reclamation unit in transit. I felt my stomach drop. What does that mean? Sean asked. Dan was already pulling us back toward the door. It means we need to move. Now! We opened the door, and the hallway wasn't dark anymore. But it wasn't empty either. At the far end stood a figure. Not human. Tall. Angular. Still. It didn't move. Until we did. We didn't speak. We didn't even breathe. The figure at the end of the hallway stood motionless. 7 feet tall, maybe more. Broad shoulders. No face. No gear. Just a smooth, metallic surface, shaped vaguely like a human, but wrong. Like someone tried to guess what a person should look like and got it, almost right. Then it tilted its head. The movement was too smooth, too fluid. Dan whispered, "Back." Quietly. We stepped away, inch by inch. No sudden moves. The lights above us buzzed. The unit moved. 1 step. It didn't make a sound. Just glided forward, weightless. Tyler gasped. That was enough. The thing broke into a run. No hesitation. No warning. Dan yelled, "Go!" We ran. The hallway blurred. Corners, doors, flashing lights. I don't even remember how we moved, only that something was chasing us, fast, inhuman, tireless. We slammed into a steel door marked Lab 2B, and Sean hit the lock panel. It didn't ask for a code, just blinked green, and sealed shut behind us. Inside, a laboratory. Shelves, machinery, dry glassware. A chemical smell still hung in the air. I leaned against the wall, trying to breathe. Dan looked at the door. It didn't follow. Yet. Sean walked to a workstation. Old papers. Notes. A laptop. It was still on. The laptop had a terminal open. No password required. Just one file flashing. Project Oblivion. Autonomous Retrieval Unit / status. Live. Underneath, lines of text. Cycling. Target presence confirmed. Containment breach logged. Asterisk memory interference. Unstable asterisk. Units deployed. 1. What the hell does that mean? Tyler asked. I read it again. Memory interference? They're tracking mines? Dan stepped back, pale. They weren't just building weapons down here. They were experimenting with thought. Sean turned the laptop toward us. The screen now showed a new message. Unit 1, current location, Lab 2B. We froze. It was outside. The lights flickered once. Then again. Then we heard metal scrape against the other side of the door. The sound at the door wasn't banging. It was scraping. Deliberate. Slow. Like something testing the metal. Learning it. We backed away from the entrance, every instinct screaming to run, but there was nowhere to go. The lab had one way in, one way out. Sean scanned the room, hands shaking. There's gotta be another exit, vent, hatch, anything. But all we saw were sealed walls and shelves full of forgotten science. Dan approached the far wall, running his fingers along the seams. Then we heard it. Asterisk click. 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 Asterisk. Not from the door. From the ceiling. We all looked up. A panel was sliding open. Slow, mechanical. Something was being lowered. It looked like a camera. Or a sensor. A small lens. Red light blinking. Dan didn't hesitate. He picked up a metal stand and smashed it. The light went dark. But the door began to open. Not kicked in. Unlocked. We stepped back, bracing for whatever that thing was, the reclamation unit, to come through. But instead, it stopped, and a voice came through a speaker in the ceiling. Rough. Male. American. Flat and motionless. You're not authorized to be here. But you already knew that. We didn't answer. You've triggered a containment breach. That unit is not designed to distinguish. It recovers everything. Dan stepped forward. Who are you? Pause. I was one of them. Before they locked me in. Silence. I can help you get out, but you'll have to go deeper. Tyler laughed, a high, panicked laugh. You're insane. I'm the only reason you're still breathing. The door opened a crack. The lights flickered, not white now, but blue. Sean looked at us. We going with the psycho voice? I nodded. We had no choice. The door slid open fully. The hallway beyond was bathed in blue light. Different from the cold, flickering fluorescence above, this felt intentional. Calmer. Colder. Controlled. We stepped out, one by one. No sign of the reclamation unit. No movement at all. Turn left. Service access door. Go through it, the voice said. Dan hesitated. Why are you helping us? Because I remember what it was like before they erased me. We turned left. The door he mentioned was unmarked. No handle, no lock. But when we approached, it clicked and slid open like it recognized us. Inside, narrow stairs going down, even deeper. Sean stopped at the first step. Guys, if we go down there, I don't think we're coming back the same. Same as what? I asked. He didn't answer. We descended. The air shifted again. Warmer, humid. Like the facility had a different ecosystem the deeper you went. This level was older. Rusted pipes, exposed wiring, faded numbers on the walls. But it was still alive. Still powered. Every 20 feet, we saw cameras. But they didn't move. Didn't track us. They're not connected to the network anymore, the voice said. I broke the loop. We didn't ask how. Then we reached a thick steel door, this one marked in red. Sublevel 5, Archive. Dan placed his hand near the scanner, and the door opened without question. Inside was like stepping into someone's mind. Dozens of pods, transparent, floating and fluid, each with a person inside. Men, women, all different ages. Faces calm, peaceful. Tyler nearly fell backward. What the hell is this? They called it memory containment. They weren't just studying thoughts. They were harvesting them. Sean whispered. They're alive. Yes, but only the parts the facility needed. I felt sick. They thought memories were dangerous. So they began locking them away, person by person, layer by layer. Dan walked up to a terminal. It flickered on without touch. A list of names appeared. Files. Years. Then he found one file that made him stop. It was labeled Daniel Reed, partial retention. He didn't speak, just stared at it. Sean turned to me. What if we're already in here? Dan didn't move, just stared at the terminal like it might blink first. His name was right there. Daniel Reed, partial retention. Last accessed 3 years ago. Tyler stepped closer, reading over his shoulder. That's your full name, right? Dan nodded slowly. I never came here. Not before today. Sean scrolled through the list. There were hundreds of names. Some were tagged as deleted, others integrated. I found mine. Michael Carter. Scan error/retry. I froze. What does this mean? I asked. It means they tried to extract your memory, the voice said. But something resisted. Something's still yours. You've all been here before. The silence that followed was absolute. Dan opened his file. A grainy black and white video flickered to life. It showed him, younger, maybe by a few years, sitting in a chair in a dark room. Wires connected to his head. Eyes closed. Then his voice. I don't remember volunteering for anything. A second voice, off camera. You didn't. Dan stepped back. His breathing was shallow now. They used the base for memory trials, for containment, for control. But the minds, they didn't stay quiet. Some of them never left. Sean whispered. You mean like ghosts? No, not spirits. Trapped thoughts, detached from bodies. Some of them still think they're real. The lights in the archive dimmed for a second. One of the pods hissed. Air escaped through a tiny valve. Then the voice said something we hadn't heard yet, something different. It whispered, You're not the first group, but you might be the last. And then the screen in front of Dan blinked again. File restoration requested. He didn't touch anything. That's not me, he said. The request went through anyway. The pod behind us lit up. And inside, someone who looked exactly like Dan opened his eyes. The pod hissed as it unlocked. We didn't move. The man inside sat up slowly. Same jawline, same eyes, same scar above the right eyebrow. A football injury Dan got in high school. Tyler whispered, This is not happening. Sean backed into a shelf of equipment. A tray clattered to the floor. Dan just stood there. The other him blinked, looked around the room, then locked eyes with Dan, and smiled. Took you long enough. His voice was identical, but sharper, colder, like it had all the same words, but none of the hesitation. Dan didn't answer. He looked like his entire body was trying to shut down. "They said I was a backup," the other Dan continued. "An extraction artifact. They stored me when you started resisting." But I never stopped thinking. Not for 1 second. He stood, wet, dripping with fluid, but calm, like he belonged here. "You don't remember this place, but I do. Every test, every memory, every time they took something from us. So now I'm wondering." He stepped forward. "What's left in you?" Sean grabbed my arm. "What the hell is going on?" "He's not a clone," said the voice over the speaker. "He's you. A version that stayed. And now he wants out." The other Dan looked at the terminal. One more command blinked. "Transfer active/host exchange initiated." Tyler screamed. "Shut it down." But the lights pulsed. The room trembled. Dan looked at me, panic now in his eyes. "Mike," he said. Then he fell to his knees, and the other Dan smiled wider. Dan collapsed, convulsing. His hands clutched his head like it was splitting apart from the inside. The terminal screen flashed, lines of data pouring in, too fast to read. The other Dan didn't move. He just watched. "You feel it, don't you?" he said. "The fracture. The overlap. Two versions in one space." I rushed forward. "Stop it." The voice in the ceiling came back, louder now. "The process can't be reversed. Only rerouted. Make a choice, Mike. He can't hold both. One of them has to be overridden." Sean shouted. "What does that mean?" "Overridden how?" "The base doesn't delete," the voice said. "It replaces." Behind me, Tyler was trying to shut down the system, yanking cables, smashing panels, but the machinery kept humming, unfazed. I knelt beside Dan. His eyes were flickering rapidly. He whispered, barely audible, "Don't let it be him." The other Dan stepped closer. "You've seen what I am. I'm memory without guilt, knowledge without hesitation. He's broken, but I can finish this. Get us out." He offered me his hand. "Let me in." The terminal blinked again. Finalization required. External confirmation needed. And next to it, a prompt. Two options. Authorize. Deny. Everything was waiting on me. My best friend, twitching in my arms. His twin, flawless, merciless, and far too calm. And I had to choose who walked out. I stared at the screen. Two options. A heartbeat pounding in my ears louder than the machine hum. Authorize. Deny. Dan was still alive. Barely. Twitching, eyes flickering, lost in some internal war. The other Dan stood calm, his hand still outstretched. "You hesitate. That's your problem," he said. "I could fix that. You really want to save him? He's a memory. A broken file. I'm the update." I looked at Sean. Tyler. Both frozen. No answers. Only fear. I looked back at the terminal, and I made a choice. I slammed my hand down on the panel, but not the screen. Instead, I ripped the entire console off the wall. Sparks flew. The lights flickered. The pod system screamed with feedback. The other Dan lunged, but Sean tackled him mid-motion. They crashed into the shelves, glass shattering. Tyler grabbed the console and threw it across the room. Dan, the Real Dan, gasped. Like something released him. The backup Dan stood, bleeding from the head. His smile was gone. "You really think that fixed anything?" he hissed. "You think this was the only copy?" Then the lights went out completely. When I opened my eyes again, we were outside. Night sky. Trees. Dirt under my palms. No base. No gate. No signs of the facility. Just us. Breathing. Alive. Dan was unconscious but stable. Tyler and Sean were bruised, scraped, but there. No one spoke. Not for a long time. Later, Dan opened his eyes. Did we get out? I looked at him. Yeah, I said, but not all of us. He didn't ask what that meant. And I didn't tell him, because somewhere, one of me didn't leave.